So we have pretty much 90 minutes for this session. And we have 5 speakers on the panel. So each one of them will just come in for a few minutes to talk about their work in regard to youth, in regard to inter-African trade, but also in regard to social innovation and how such system change can scale up access to financial services. And after that, we just want to make this an open conversation where we can get more feedback from you, from your work, and also how can we improve what we're doing currently for you and what we're doing with you. So this initiative was co-organized or organized by Impact Africa. And I'll tell you a little bit more about Impact Africa, but everyone here sitting here and those online also are members of this consortium that we call Impact Africa. And why Impact Africa? Because we realize, and when I see we, I mean these organizations that are part of it, and I can also name them. We have the British Council online, and then I have 2 of my colleagues here. We just come to a point where we realize that one, we want really, as we all hear this morning, and I think as we hear yesterday, that the continent is the youngest continent in the world. But technically, if you're looking at the policy making, which is the system change, we don't see many young people at the policy making level. How many ministers do we know who are maybe under 30? That's really one of the questions we know. How many initiatives, especially the startup sectors, that we see right now that there are specific countries who already have policies or have framework that are really allowing them to recognize them as social enterprise or as social entrepreneurs. We don't have many of those laws in many countries. I think it's just few that you can name. So what we decided also is that it's always the case where we're seeing new models coming from outside of Africa being replicated in Africa. But the learning doesn't really go the other way around. There are so many innovation in Africa, but because of lack of funding, because of lack of support, lack of technical assistance, because maybe lack of a legal framework, they're not being able to scale it up, they're not being able to replicate it, they're not being able to adapt it, or maybe scale it up to at the global level or the regional level. So I can just go on with the list, but when it comes to also finance, we realize that most of the funding Africa, like 74% of the funding that are NGOs in Africa. So only 7% of those funding goes to local African NGO or African-led NGOs. So we see that also another problem. So we said to ourselves, if we're all working for the continent, we're working for organizations that are supporting youth in the continent, how come, why can we get into a consortium that really allow us, one, to focus on what we call the missing middle of Africa. And the missing middle, I think Dr. Father Charles was talking about it earlier, these are the most vulnerable ones. And I think COVID has demonstrated that challenge. 70% of African youth during COVID. The longest that some of those were able to hold was 6 months. So really, this means that they are very vulnerable. So I think I'll leave Father Charles to talk about that. And we said then one will focus on the missing middle, which is the youth and the women. Second, we said we also need to leverage funding, and we realized also the capital of the general investors, the venture investors, really they're not really interested in what we call the small ticket or the small ticket size, meaning anything that's below 250. They're interested in anything that's maybe $1 million above, because anything less than that really doesn't worth their investment. The bandwidth they will take for them is higher compared to what they will get in return. And also it might be that there is more risk for them. So there is pretty much in Africa a gap to funding what we call really the small size tickets, especially those who are focusing on social innovation, especially those who are focusing on youth and women, which we call the middle, the missing middle, especially those who are really creating jobs, those who are really influencing policies to really create that legal framework to recognize their work, to also give them the support, the funding, the technical assistance for them to be able to replicate their work, scale it up, and also compete in the global world where African products and services are seen as something that's really competitive at the global level, not necessarily something that requires a quota to be able to get into the global market. That's really the main reason why all these organizations decided that they will come together to create what we call this Impact Africa Consortium. So the Impact Africa Consortium also has 3 legs. We have what we call our annual summit that we organize. So we're organizing the 3rd one in Nigeria. The first one was in Joburg, the 2nd one in Kenya, and the 3rd one will happen this year, where we bring 150 and social innovators to really expose and showcase what they have presented, the solution they innovated, so government can learn from it. Partnership can be developed between government and the entrepreneurs and the private sector through funding, and a new system that really will be on or co-created by everyone. The second leg is really, I mentioned it about the funding. We said March to be exact, we're launching the Impact Africa Facility Fund. So we don't really want to call it a fund. That's why we say it's a facility, because really it's a process, one, to get those African entrepreneurs who are looking for 5,000, 25,000, up to 250,000, to give them the seed money, but also to give them the technical assistance, the incubation, the acceleration, the support, because we know that also data have shown us that, you know, for small businesses, 70% of small businesses who cannot go over the first 36 months, they really have a high likelihood of dying, because the first 36 months, which is the first 3 years, are the most important period of any small businesses. So we decided that we're going to launch a fund to really give them funding with a very, very small low interest. And also we'll make sure that we give them the seed money and the grant to support them through the incubation, the acceleration, because that's also another part, the capacity building, that's really important. How do you run a business? How do you build it? How do you get the support that's needed before you can attract funding? And then we push you into the real market, which is where you can get into the $1 million and so. And the third one is really created a platform where we all come and work together and be able, where we bring the different players of the ecosystem, the entrepreneurs, the policymakers, the private sector, the scholars, to really come and learn, sharing data, and also accelerating the whole process of accessing finances for youth by supporting them, but letting them be at the center of the whole process. So this is really something I just wanted to share with you to tell you more about Impact Africa. Now I'll get into my colleagues, where each one of them will tell you more about what they're doing through their organization, what are the challenges, and why this consortium of Impact Africa has value to them and why they want to be part of it. And then at the end, we'll come to your question, and hopefully you'll bring also more value to what we're doing so we can learn from you and see eventually how can we partner. So I'll get to Nombu, so you can tell us more about your work.
Thanks for such a brilliant presentation, Pape. Like I said, I am leading the Agenda 2063 Academy, which its key mandate is really to support any initiatives that are supposed to accelerate our continental framework, which is Agenda 2063. So when we started setting up, one of the key, the closest, closest models that are very close to our hearts, and that well, before I even explain that, as professionally as well, I am very much into startups. I'm into innovation. I am a startup coach as well. So when it comes to anybody who comes to our organization and they're an entrepreneur, and most of them, they share the challenges that they have. And one of the key problems that they share about or they discuss is the fact that funding especially, and even just to the guidance on who to talk to if they needed certain mentorship, or they needed to expand even beyond just their national borders and parameters. So, so to us, the real instrument to accelerate the Agenda 2063 is entrepreneurship, it's innovation, it's startups. So we really are into supporting the startup ecosystem. So having said that, we as an organizations ourselves, we actually had, challenges when it came to funding ourselves, access to funding. And because we have a vision to actually take a large majority, if not all Africans with us on the journey to support them. But if ourselves then we're having that issue, and we have a lot of people as well who have similar issues, we then sat down and figured out what is it that we could do in order to kind of assist. And we're actually blessed enough then that we have found partners such as Ashoka Africa, as well as all the partners that we have today on the consortium, and collectively using the systems change model, we are collectively working on finding solutions on how to bring everybody along together. So we are really much looking forward and happy about what we have started and the journey going forward. And we are looking forward to also kind of interact with most of you and try to figure out how we could help each other in order to just even explore and network further to figure out how we can really support each other and create the Africa we want. Because we all want the same thing as Africans. We want integration, we want free movement, we want to trade amongst each other. We want to see an Africa whom are independent of always looking outwards. We want, as youth, we want to stay here. I don't want to go to Europe. I'm happy here. I want to contribute towards building this continent. And part of really what drives me every day is to really kind of expand that, infected to every young people, to say that we are the solution to this continent. This continent belongs to us. Nobody will ever come with any other solutions. Yes, we have friends who have the heart for Africa, who want to help us, accelerate and expand. And yes, we want to have them, to bring them aboard. And we are happy to work with them. But really, the steering driving starts with us. And I'm just personally very optimistic about the continent. And I'm looking forward to what it would look like in the next 10, 15 years. And I'm very happy to be part of this journey. And I hope you can all join us together and just see this brighter future instead of trying to run away to Europe or Asia or whatever continent it is. We just have to be here and build this.
Thanks, Numbu. So we'll go now to two of my colleagues on Zoom. We're going to go to Pauline, who's the CEO of AfriProspect and the managing partner at ShEquity. So she will tell you more about her work, especially her focus on women, and why is it important, and also why she cares about joining also Impact Africa. And then we'll go to Moses, who's the regional director of British Council. So Pauline, if you can take it over from here, if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you well. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much, Pape and Nombulelo, for the introduction. So my name is Pauline Koelbl, and I'm the founder and ShEquity managing partners. And ShEquity is an investment vehicle that focusing on mobilizing smart investment for African female entrepreneurs and innovators. Why? Because we believe that women are the key drivers for Africa's sustainable development. So our approach is really about combining early stage cash investment with technical support and access to high value networks. And the problem we're trying to solve is really this existing 42 billion gender funding gap in Africa. So you heard where it's 42 billion US dollars gender funding gap in Africa. So to achieve this, basically what we have decided to do is to set up this female-focused investment ecosystem that combines cash investment via ShEquity, and also the de-risking part as well as the venture building support through our accelerator that we call SHIBA, ShEquity Business Accelerator. So when we set up ShEquity, we realized very quickly that if we were to just bring cash, that was not enough. Why? Because again, most of the entrepreneurs we work with are living in ecosystems where they're not getting the kind of support that usually you want to receive if you want to grow and scale your business. So this strategy really is based on the conviction that cash alone is not enough. If we wanted to address all inequity and inequality that we see in the system, and also other barriers that make it harder for African female founders to compete equally on the marketplace. So today, access to capital remains the number one challenge for African female entrepreneurs and innovators across the continent. And so just to perhaps put things in perspective in terms of numbers, today, women operate about 40% of SMEs across the continent. However, again, they face this $42 billion US dollars gender funding gap. And so a recent report by Britta Bridge and the World Bank that just came out actually in October confirmed that only 3% of all investment that was made in Africa towards a startup between 2013 and 2021 went to female-led startup. Again, only 3%. And you might have seen online, like the celebration of the fact that right now, this year, we have startup have raised close to $3 billion. It's basically the highest amount of money raised in a startup, but only 3% goes to women. So we think this is a problem that we need to jointly tackle and solve. Because also, again, this is very unfortunate because as you might have heard, and if you haven't heard, I want you also to remember this number, this statistic. So women reinvest 90% of their revenue to sector that benefit their society, family, comparing it to 40% for men. Again, one good reason to say, okay, let's invest in women, because if you invest in women, 90% will go back to the community. And a recent McKinsey report also confirmed that 316 billion could be added to African GDP by 2025 if the gender gap is bridged in Africa. So you can see that basically investing in women is not a charity, and it's not just a nice thing to do. It's a smart business. So we invite you to join us and do this smart business investing in women. As again, women represent around 50% of African population. And of course, they raise the remaining 50%. So today we have 9 years towards achieving the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And we know we cannot achieve this milestone if we leave behind the 50% of our people who also are raising the remaining 50%. So for us, it was just really great when we were invited to join Impact Africa, because as our most popular saying on the continent says, if you want to go far, go with others, and if you want to go fast, then go alone. So we want to go far. We don't care how long it's going to take. We hope we can achieve this very quickly. But we wanted to join everyone. And so we are very thrilled to be a part of Impact Africa, because we believe that addressing this gender funding gap and unlocking the potential of our people can only happen if we join hands and we can address those systematic and structural challenges. We agree that we can achieve best outcome for our continent if we collaborate and avoid duplication of effort and, of course, waste of resources. And investing in women and the youth is the key to truly unlocking the potential of our continent. So collectively, we can unlock the potential of our most valuable assets, women and the youth, and build Africa we want, as you said very nicely, Nombulelo. So really a true Wakanda forever. So thank you very much.
So much. So I think you're taking note, because opportunities are being presented to you, for you as women and youth. So I think really we look forward to more questions and exchanging with you with everything you heard. So let's go to Moses Anaba, who's actually the regional director of British Council, but also one believing in Pan-Africanism, believing in co-creation, believing in going farther, not fast, but farther, as Pauline said. So Moses, you have the floor. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Pape. Good to be on the call. My name is Moses Anibaba. I'm the regional director for British Council across Africa, and our sort of our vision for our vision in Africa. We're not doing it for Africa, but our vision in Africa with all the people that we work with is really to create opportunity and to help young people, as we've just been hearing, to fulfill their ambition. I think that's clear. I want to just maybe mention four things. Look, Pape has outlined what the Impact Africa Fund is doing, and but I just want to outline four things. One, that the reason why you hear Nombo and Pauline speak earlier and the partners that we're working with is that there is unashamedly and we're unapologetic about our belief in the future of Africa, no matter what is happening. So, that is deep-rooted. You see that coming through just what Nombo was saying earlier. And that's something that is shared, and not just shared at a personal level, but at an institutional level as well, and whatever. So that for me is the fundamental thing, that there is a complete belief, conviction. If you wake us up in the middle of the night, we will say the same thing, and we believe it. Secondly, that everything that we've been doing in terms of Impact Africa Summit that Pape mentioned at the beginning, and the Impact Africa Fund itself, is really based on research, and facts that Pape was given some there. Pauline was just talking about all those statistics as well. But in terms of we over three or 4 years from our Impact Summit in initially Ghana, then Joburg, Kenya, and now going to Nigeria, we really listened to what young people were telling us about access to finance, in terms of leadership, in terms of what is needed as well. And that came. And secondly, what we did was we looked at carried out a research into about 150 funds that were supposed to be meant for the benefit of Africa, and we looked at what they were doing. And Pape was talking about ticket size and the focus as well, and whatever, and the clear gaps that emerged there. So that's the second thing around research as well. The third thing is really around participation and partnership, actually, not participation, but partnership. And as Pauline was saying to the end there, it's really a collaboration. We initially thought that we will be establishing an impact fund, that only, between Ashoka, British Council, EcoBank, and each institution is selected because of the strength they bring. But as we started listening, we also reflecting on that issue about partnership, that we felt that actually we had got it maybe slightly wrong, that we needed to look at a facility, and it's more of a kind of it's almost like a supply chain as well, along the way, with different partners bringing in their expertise into that as well. And I think the last thing is this: it's about action. And we don't want to be known as people that just talk, but we want to convert what we've heard, what we see, into action. And that's hence why not only we've been focusing on the Impact Africa Summit, but also the fund itself that, as Pape was saying earlier, that we're launching very soon as well. So that's where we come in. That's where British Council comes in as well. And we're delighted to be part of it. And there's no acrimony or any issues among the partners that are coming on board, because there is a common bond around, that belief that I talked about earlier as well. And I hope that you can join us in that as well and see this to fruition. It's going to happen, and it's already happening. And I'll stop there. Thank you, Pape.
So much, Moses. So as Moses said, you heard him. He said, on our study, we realized that there was 150, capital investors or venture investors who are dedicated, or who said they're dedicated to Africa. But the result of the study really, show otherwise, that they're not really necessarily meeting the need. So to wrap up, we have 2 new partners who joined really Impact Africa, also supporting us. One is called Now Partner. So we have a partner, Walter Link, who will be joining via video. I will just play it so you can hear it. It's a really short video. And then we have another partner that we're doing via the Vatican, but represented here by Father Charles, who will be doing the closing so we can open up the questions. So if everything is ready, Aya, we can just play the video from Walter quickly, and then I'll hand over the mic to Father Charles, who will close speaking on behalf of the Vatican and what we can do together, and then we'll open up the questions to see what we can do with you, the public. Go ahead, Aya, please.
I think what's very important here is Impact Africa is not just supporting a few individual projects. That's of course also very important, but it's huge. It has the potential to impact millions of people, and we need to have that large scale impact because we need to demonstrate that another economy is possible. That is really what we need around the world, and that's what United for Regeneration and Now Partners is trying to bring about. It's not enough anymore if we have some wonderful companies and we can be all very proud about running them and happy telling the story. No, we need to show that at all scales and all countries and all cultures and all sectors and all industries, we can fully integrate economic success with the regeneration of people and planet. That's creating a new mainstream of business. That's what we really need. And all of these youth and women entrepreneurs, that have already this commitment to impact, if we really work together to empower them, they can really model that. And they need to model that in Africa. It's not enough to have models from Holland or from America or even from Brazil. We need them on the ground in Africa, and together we can really make that happen. And then we can communicate it through the scale and also through our outreach to all sectors of community. And this is, of course, what this initiative is about.
So now we'll just hand over the mic to Father Charles, who's representing the Vatican, also the Cardinal. So please go ahead and give us the closing, and then from there we just open up the questions.
Thank you very much, Pape. I'd like to mention maybe 3 or 4 things very quickly. To start with is sort of the, the tagline, which is under which we are operating, which was created by Pope Francis, which is prepare the future. And it doesn't say prepare for the future, as if you are preparing for a risk that is coming, but prepare the future, meaning we have capacity to imagine, to envision the future we want, the Africa we want. So we, working under the COVID-19 Commission of the Vatican, to foster that kind of thinking and mobilize humanity and communities and countries to be intentional about creating the future we want, prepare the future. So that mindset shift is what we are working for, is what we are preaching, is what we are facilitating, as well as fostering. Secondly, you have heard Pape mention a lot of times about systems change. And that's where we come in. We come in on a number of issues that have been mentioned, the support and the capitalization of youth, but especially we care about systems. All of these things that have been mentioned they have pointed to what we see. What do we see? We see women marginalized. We see young people marginalized. We see all of these things going wrong, economies that are almost falling apart. But what we are trying to foster as a commission is to, through deep research and advocacy, to ask why, and usher in a new way of doing things that leads to transformation of economies, of societies, and of hearts. If we don't usher in that process of transformation of the global economy, local economies, communities, and the hearts, we won't see what we want to see. So how do we ensure that we come about with these systems change? And we in the Vatican, together with all our partners and everyone involved in this process, we work for systemic change also. At a systemic global level, we ask ourselves the question, why is Africa the way it is now? Why are the young the way they are, or the women in Africa? The first level we consider is a systemic, the global level. The way the global economy runs is sick. It kills. That's what Pope Francis says. It kills. It doesn't give life. So how do we work so that we reform it? The economy is very important because it's an economy that delivers what we want. Economy that delivers education, that delivers jobs, that delivers livelihoods. So if we don't create an economy that is able to ensure that young people have jobs, and productive ones, including women, and that African women, African countries thrive, if we don't have such a global economy, it won't work. And by global economy, I mean those global rules and international rules that have been written that determine the way we trade globally and the way we trade in Africa. The way the WTO rules have been written, they affect the way we do things here and globally. So we in the Vatican, working with our partners here, we are fostering for system change at the global level so that those rules that have been written by one group or one set of countries, the developed North, could be rewritten together in consultation with others, and they be more just in what we call global justice. So we are working for that global reform. But also, we can't just keep blaming the West or the North for things that go wrong. We also are fostering through research and advocacy and engagement to push African countries, first of all, to look at their own ways of doing things. You know, for example, I heard Pape speak about lack of access to capital and some of the difficulties that our young people or women or any other person or group of people go through to just establish business. And we ask ourselves, why is it that when a foreign entity wants to come and do business, it is given all manner of incentives? But a local African young person wants to do the same is not given the same. Why is it our economy, we have allowed them to be externally oriented to attract investment from outside without putting emphasis on building our own initiatives, by creating those incentives that we do for business partners outside? Why can't we do the same? Why is it that most of the African economies up to now are led by multinational businesses? Except for South Africa and maybe a few others, most of African economies are mono economies based on commodity production with export of raw materials to the North. They are produced not for Africans, but for the North. And all of this knowledge and business is driven by outsiders. That must change. And that's a system that we in the church, in the Vatican, are advocating for. Unless that changes, we won't go anywhere else. And we have heard this conversation from those that speak about Africa economic and social transformation. These are the systemic changes that we are working for, that we need to usher in. And like I said, the transformation of the global economy, the local economies, as well as the transformation of systems and hearts and ways of looking at things. And very quickly, without spending too much time, Pape, is also to focus on the productive capacity of young people and women that we have. I like to emphasize what Our Lady mentioned there, the contribution of women, even the contribution that women make, that is not counted. It has been found in research that women do more work or spend more hours of work than men. The bulk of that is not counted for. What can we do to increase the value of that work? Same with young people. And I would like to end then by proposing that we are going to work to promote how do we of handling what we are talking about, even if we give them access to funds, but if they don't have the technology, the know-how, the knowledge and the skills, they will underperform and their enterprises won't go anywhere. So we are working also at that level to ensure that the young people have the skills, the knowledge and the technology to give them productivity and also to enhance their, the value of what they produce. Thank you.
So now it's time for you. So thank you so much, Father Charles. I think you heard so many interventions or so many perspectives. You heard about, you heard from Pauline the need to invest more in women, and also she was able to show that evidence also show, you know, the high return on investing in women and how it also contributes to the GDP. You also heard from Moses, you know, the whole idea of African-led, you know, the idea of also venture capitalists, or how research shown that 150 venture investors were not able really to address 100% the need of the missing middle, which is the marginalized youth. You also heard from Father Charles, who talk about system change, you know, how the commitment from the Vatican and how system change is important, and how interaction and commerce and businesses between Africa and also Africa and the rest of the world, having control of your own future, your own economy also is important in investing on the youth. And also, lastly, you heard from Nombulelo saying exactly the future or the Africa that youth want. So I think taking all those things into consideration, now I'll hand over the mic to you to really ask questions that you have in regard to those points or anything else. How can you benefit from this consortium of partners? How can you also contribute to trade within Africa and outside Africa? How can you have access to finance? How can we make sure also you scale up your businesses or have access to inclusive finances? How can you contribute to system change to also create the legal framework that most startups in Africa also need, but they don't necessarily have in their country? So back to you. I don't know how you want to do this. We can take a list, or also you can just pass along the mic. We can take many questions. You can direct it to a specific speaker, or you can just open it up and we'll ask the speakers both online and on site who can address it. So we have 1, okay, 2, 3.
Good afternoon. So as Afana has rightly said, that the women have a great role to play, and when you look at an entrepreneur, even if it is a man, the woman is having a big role by supporting him behind. So most of the times she is not seen as an entrepreneur, but she is the force behind the entrepreneur. So there is this scenario that I've observed in my country, in Cameroon. In the northern part, most women, because it's more of polygamous families, they are like at home, and most of the times they have aid. So when I went for research, I discovered that most food aid that is brought by the international organization is the World Food Program and all the other organizations. They bring in rice, they bring in foodstuff to give to women who have they give
Go ahead, yeah. Just push it away.
So I was saying that we see the women, they are given food by the international organization. This rice itself is not made in Africa, not to talk of Cameroon itself. Meanwhile, Cameroon rice farmers are suffering from market for their rice. But we want to see the social aspect of it when they are supporting women. Who really does the need-based assessment? Do those women need food or they need empowerment? You come to a polygamous home and you give 5 kilograms of rice. And when you look at the budget that is being spent on humanitarian aid in the north, it's worth billions. But what I ask is that if this money was really seen the north still be reported as the highest place that needs help in the country. So I just want to solicit to the NGOs, as you rightly said, that most of them who come in, most of the funds go to the ones who are not even the locally based NGOs. That before any project is funded, they should really see if it is need-based, because all the money that is being spent, really, for me, I think that is wastage of resources.
Thank you. So we go to the second question. So that question, I think, Father, I'll give it to you once it's time to respond, and then others can add. So let's go to the second question.
Good afternoon. Justin Ajingatani. I'm the founder of Union Farms of Africa in Cameroon. So I will still direct my question one to Father and the other one to you. Lately, in the last 10 years, I have personally noticed that the churches in particular, they are growing so fast, but the social impact is so minimal. I notice between West Africa, Central Africa, churches that emerge within the next 10 years, and you could see a pastor flying maybe a private jet, but with the most poorest people going to those churches. So it keeps me wondering if actually God exists, because I was made to understand that as a man of God, as a missionary, we are there to help the needy. But if these same missionaries acquire a lot of money from big organizations and then make themselves so rich, and to an extent where some of them are guarded by military people, the same Christians, they don't have access to these people. Sometimes you need to pay to stay in a hotel to get audience to talk to your preacher. And sometimes worse of it, you see them organizing some things you call crusade, or you call, in very busy communities, you see them dancing from morning to night. And these are the same youth and women who are supposed to be at their job sites tomorrow. So I think something needs to be done to really address this, because if you want to invest on youth and women with all the strength, if these churches keep growing at this pace, I'm afraid Africa may go back to where we never had imagined. Another thing, I had the opportunity to consult with one World Bank project in my country. They call the Piedmont Project. The idea is that World Bank would give money to the government would hire those experts whom they believe were experts. Because when I joined this project as a junior consultant, most of my colleagues, they will tell me that we have been in this place for 20 years. Everything has been the same. I could remember one time we had, my country is French and English. You have letterheads that were printed like 30 years ago. The guys, they'll just keep photocopying it and making their letters on it. So when I proposed to my boss, why don't we change it, innovate it, make it English and French? He said, when he got to this office, everything was like that, and we must maintain it like that. So there is really this dominance, the old and the youth. And if we are talking about systemic changes, and you get this founder of an NGO, when he's passing away, his son, probably his son is one typical one I know, who resigned as a banker from the US and is running this very huge NGO, is supposed to do something on agriculture. I think something really needs to be done if we really want to move Africa to the next step. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll take a third person, yeah, and then we'll go on the first round of questions, and then we'll come to you for the second round quickly. So I think just to recap on these two questions, one was about some missionary collecting money and the way their lifestyle, and the second one is about dealing with experts or so-called experts in local problems. How do they solve it? So I think I'll both Pauline and Moses and Numbu are hearing me for the second question. So the missionary aspect, I'll give it to Father Charles. So you have two questions there, and then the third one, I will see who responded. So let's take the third person.
Good afternoon. Okay, I am Asamoah Flora. I come from Ivory Coast. I'm trying to express myself in English because my original language is French. So I try. I can ask my question in French? Okay, thank you. On remarque en Afrique qu'il y a des enfants de la rue, des jeunes qui sont dans la rue. Et ces jeunes-là, souvent, ils s'adonnent ensuite au vol, au pillage et tout. Ce que moi, je voudrais savoir, c'est est-ce que c'est possible que l'Église puisse construire des centres de jeunes, un peu comme des foyers. Maintenant, on prend en charge ces jeunes, mais on ne les prend pas seulement en charge. Au sein de ces centres, de ces foyers-là, on crée des activités, comme par exemple la couture, la coiffure. Et pendant qu'ils sont dans ces centres, qu'on les prend en charge, ils travaillent en même temps aussi pour subvenir aussi aux dépenses, voilà, de ce centre, de ce foyer. Et on prend une tranche d'âge. On ne prend pas peut-être des tout petits qui sont encore avec leur maman, mais vraiment des jeunes qu'on voit dans la rue, on les prend à arriver à un certain niveau, on leur dit, bon, on suppose qu'après ce temps que vous avez passé dans ce centre, vous êtes apte à pouvoir vous en sortir dans la société. Donc, je voudrais savoir si c'est vraiment possible que l'Église puisse installer ces centres-là dans nos différents pays africains, parce qu'on en a besoin.
So thank you. We have three questions. So the second round, I'll start with you, but you can hand me over the mic. I'll just translate quickly her question to Father Charles. Oh, Father Charles, you speak French. So he speaks French, so that's good. But just for the public, she's saying that there are street kids all over Africa. So she's thinking, or she's suggesting to the church if they can create playground for kids, but not necessarily for the little one. So playgrounds where you have activities that can look like the apprenticeship center, where they can learn how to do kneading, braiding, and sewing, and then that will help them at least acquire some skills so they can go back into society and become active and productive members of society. So that's what he's asking, if the church can help with that, with street kids all over Africa. So Father Charles, pretty much you have all three questions, and the fourth questions, I'll see who pick it up, and then we'll take it from there. We'll go to the second round.
The first one, can you hear me? Yeah, the first one I actually alluded to it, and I agree with you. There was a lady here, I think it's Cameroon, yeah. I think you're right. You know, women are very productive. They spend a lot of hours work and they produce work, except that work is not valued, or its value is diminished for obvious reasons. And I agree with you that what our women need now is not essentially to be given food or money, but is to empower them. Everybody's talking about women empowerment. And you see, there was a time when we thought that the person who had power was the person who had money or these physical resources. And I think studies have shown reflection, and we have come to know that knowledge is power. And in fact, somebody once remarked that what separates a developed northern country from a least developed southern country is not essentially in terms of resource, mineral or material resources. If that was the case, Africa would have been richer. And this person said, what separates the north from the south is a gap in knowledge. And I see that in women. Yeah, because of what we heard in the presentation, they are less educated. They don't have, opportunities to advance themselves. And in fact, even now, we are dealing with a situation in the commission where we are looking at numbers are alarming. Those are things we should stop. Yeah, and I agree with you. I can't state more. We need to take care of that. And then there was a question about the church and poverty and all of those things. And I agree with you. If you recall, when the first missionaries came, yeah, and those who followed, and actually up to now, what the traditional churches do, but especially in the beginning, they set up schools, they set up hospitals, because again, development theory has shown us that it is those countries that are capable of building their human capital that are advanced more than others. And we have seen examples of Korea, of Singapore, and others that were as poor as Africa, but invested in health, in education, in social protection, and several other things that protect human beings from poverty, from debilitation. So I agree with you. And that's why the church spent a lot of time and money. Yeah. And a lot of that money the church used was not essentially the churches, but the church mobilized resources from various people and organizations of goodwill to do that. And I agree with you, the church should continue that process, because the mission of the church is not simply to be at the pulpit, okay, and preach and keep people in the churches. Yeah, in the churches, it is important, yes, to bring people to help them grow their spirituality. And what Africa is failing to distinguish is between spirituality and religion. And there's too much religion here. What we need is spirituality. Spirituality is that inner part of us that recognizes my connection with self, with others, and if you believe, with the divine power. And then that makes you believe that what you are is not just about yourself, but about another and about the God who sends you. In that sense, then your actions will be full of compassion, of conscience, of judgment, of responsibility, of hard work, of trust, and all of those things that support business and everything else to grow. And that should be continued. But once people have been given those capabilities that help them to grow interiorly, yeah, in terms of responsibility, accountability, conscience, and hard work, then we send them out. That's why in the Catholic Church, after people come to the service, they stay for an hour or two, and then we tell them, go in peace and proclaim God by your lives, meaning go out now and make the world better. Don't just stay in the church day in, day out. And this must be sort of re-looked at. I agree with you. Yeah. Yes, we need spirituality. We need all those qualities, but we need people sent out and empowered to go and make a difference in society. And it's a church, that society, to redefine that and to keep up the work, the other side of the church, of ensuring that there's justice and there's support for those that are weak, but at the same time, develop their spirituality. Thank you. The children of the street, and as you know, the church is already doing a lot of work in that regard. In schools, the church owns a lot of schools. If you know, in an average African country, the church or faith-based, they could even be Muslim, or they could even be of other faiths. If you put them together, they run as many schools as up to 40 to 50%. Same with healthcare. So they are already doing a lot, but what the church is trying to do, which is the work that we're doing together, which I refer to, is a church to mobilize through advocacy the governments in Africa to play their role. We can't have so many children on the streets and we have governments. It's a failure of governance. It's not the failure of the church or people with philanthropy. It's the failure of governance, okay? So we need to find a way that we learn how to govern ourselves and leave no one behind. I've heard that term referred to so often, more often than not, you know. So what the church could do, then we need to mobilize, yes, philanthropy, it's okay, but by and large, government responsibility to take care of its citizens, especially the young. And this is not only because the young people are a dividend for the future, but it's an ethical imperative because these are little things with dignity, with value, and that must be respected. Which means that you and I must advocate that in the budgetary allocation, and one of the things, making this last point, one of the things we are looking at in preparing the future is that during COVID, we don't just respond to crisis, but we also look at the future. It's those governments that will spend money and time and resources investing in the future, in children, that will look different in 30 to 40 years' time. So you and I, the church, especially like you've said, and other civil society groups, must push governments to allocate enough resources to child care and other child-sensitive lines like education, health, vaccination, and all of those things. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Father. So one last question. I don't know, Moses, Nombu, or Pauline, if you can address the question about the so-called experts who are really doing work locally and most of the time winning the bids within local African countries over the local experts. I don't know if you have anything to add on there. Moses, Nombu, Pauline? Anyone?
I can try. I think this is being discussed over and over. It's a problem. And I think one way to deal with this problem is exactly what we're trying to do, saying let's have Africans lead and Africans decide who actually is the most positioned to, allocate capital and also what to fund. Because, so one of the issues we're trying to address as a ShEquity as well, it's linked with the fact that right now, most of the investors are not necessarily Africans. The VC space is not dominated by people who look like me. So how do we change the game if the people who own the money, who allocate the money, still look different from the people they're trying to give money to? So for me, this is my hope that this Impact Africa coalition address this kind of issues. Otherwise, we can go into speculation why 50% goes back. I was just facilitating a donors harmonization event last week, and basically I was talking about the fact that about 70% of the funding stays in the hands of the donors. Again, we can question why, how, or we can focus on actually putting structure in place so this doesn't happen, and that's what we're trying to do.
We start with you, and then there's this guy here, and then if there is a third one, we take it. So please go ahead.
And so, greetings, thank you very much. My name is Usandile from South Africa. I think my question maybe is directed to, I think it's Nombulelo Mbokazi. First question is, how is Impact Africa different from the NYDA, which we have here in South Africa, which is a national youth development agency that promises to give funds? But normally we find challenges with such agencies because of maybe gatekeeping, or most of the youth normally complain that, when they send their proposals or ideas, they are stolen within the agency by people who run the agencies and given to maybe relatives and those type of things. So why I'm asking how different is Impact Africa than the NYDA? Is there a better way of controlling such, and will we get most out of Impact Africa? Two, is that also which industries does Impact maybe Africa focuses on? Do you focus on all types of businesses, or is there a certain criteria of industries or businesses that you say this is our speciality, or we wish the youth can come more on these businesses, whether technology, logistics, construction, and those type of things? And also, is there a maximum amount that you give to each company or each individual? Like, let's say the maximum that we can fund you with is $10 million US, $100 million US, or is there's no certain limit or and such? Also, can Impact Africa not only assist with funding, but assist in maybe organizing a meeting with directors in certain industries? For an example, I'll make an example like a Transnet. I want to maybe list a place that is not used, but you find that I find it difficult to reach such a person. You get tossed left, right, and center to get such a meeting. So with not only funding, but can Impact Africa assist also in getting such meetings for business owners? Thank you.
We'll go to the second one. I think you have 4 questions. So Numbo, Pauline, Moses is here. We'll taking not all of those things. And Father Charles is here. And then we'll come back to the questions.
Yes, I'm Kone Aboubakar. I'm come from Mali. I would like to explain in French. Ma première question est de savoir pourquoi en Afrique, les petits exploitants agricoles travaillent comme de véritables éléphants, mais mangent comme de véritables fourmis. Ça, c'est une question vraiment qui me tient au cœur. Et là, la deuxième question, l'importation des produits alimentaires en Afrique se chiffre à 38 milliards de dollars. Au même moment, 90% des produits sont exportés à l'état brut sans aucun processus de transformation. Et prenons l'exemple sur la Côte d'Ivoire qui est le premier pays producteur de cacao, mais la Suisse est la première puissance en importation de chocolat. Le petit Ivoirien ne mange pas de chocolat. Donc je voudrais vraiment, c'est juste un peu ça. Merci beaucoup.
Okay, third question, and I think we need to translate that, but I'm still laughing a little bit. Before you get your question, what is your name again from Mali? You said Kone Aboubakar. Okay, so I think your first question was why African farmers, the African small farmers. So pretty much he was asking why the African small farmers, they pretty much produce like elephants, but they eat like mice, which means that they produce a lot, but they eat nothing of what they're eating. Pretty much, that's why I was laughing. So the second question, the second question was why Africa pretty much import more than they export, and he was just giving the example of Cote d'Ivoire and the Switzerland. The fact that Cote d'Ivoire is the #1 producer of cacao, but Swiss is the #1 producer of chocolate. You really see the paradox. So which meant we have the raw materials, we have the raw product, but we are never able to transform it and become the #1 producer. Pretty much that's the question. Is there a third question? Est-ce qu'il y a une troisième personne qui veut poser une question? Sinon, on peut... Oh, sorry. We can just go to the question. So I think the first question was that guy over there who asked about the difference between Impact Africa and a specific fund in South Africa, which I really don't know. And the question was, the second question was, how can we trust Impact Africa, given that what he witnessed or what he experienced, when you submit their proposals, they are stolen by those actually government funds and give it to their loved ones or their relatives. That was really the second question. And if I remember, the third question was about the sector. Are there any sector specific to Impact Africa? And then the fourth one is what?
How much the money?
The budget, yes. The funding limits and yeah, exactly. So I'll let maybe Lumbu, if you can say anything about the South Africa and all of those things, and I'll hand it over to Moses and Pauline if they can finish the other 3 questions.
All right. Well, it's such a pity that I don't really know how the fund he's talking about operates, but I can try to explain, because I imagine that typically the fund is really, is an old fund which has been ongoing for years, and you've had a lot of I mean, there have been probably a lot of barriers that have been created around which make it difficult for it to be efficient. So first of all, the Impact Africa Fund is built on the premise that we want to kind of created and functions is that innovation is the key driver of it. Even its design, that we are not a people that who have those old rigid methodologies of funding, such that the question that one of the participants asked about experts and sometimes the issues that are being faced at the moment about funding not necessarily being benefiting locals. So those are the key issues that we are trying to rectify. Those are the key issues that ourselves we are asking. And we spoke earlier that we are working on a systems change approach. And part of the systems change approach is really to kind of question, together with, of course, we don't claim to know it all. We don't claim to have all the answers, but we're really keen to learn more. We use the approach that we would like to learn more about our missing middle and learn more about the issues and the challenges that they have been facing, and try to kind of respond to that efficiently and innovatively. So so really we are learning by doing as well. We are learning with everybody else. We are still in the journey as well, but the idea is really to find solutions than to create more barriers than that have been there before. I'll end there, and I suppose other colleagues can add on if there's anything else to add, but they can respond to the other questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Numbu. So I think Numbu kind of addressed the difference because she might know better the local South African funds. But I'm asking Moses or Pauline if you can add on the number of sector, the transparency in terms of youth trusting Impact Africa to submit their proposal, and the third one about what will be the budget or the roof of the funding. What is the size of the tickets? So Moses, Pauline.
No, thank you very much for the question. And just to add on to Nombu, I think that there's also two things to bear in mind for us, Impact Africa. One, the governance structure that we're putting in place. And we've chosen partners, between British Council, Ashoka, EcoBank. We very much have a footprint across Africa. And, and the fund is actually across a number of markets as well. I think the other thing just to add to that as well is that, if the fund is based on success, and if because of the governance, the fact that, even just assessing the proposals that will be coming in, it's not just going to be a one-off, because we are starting, as Pap was saying, we're looking at incubation, we're looking at training, we're looking at making sure that people are investment ready. So by the time you kind of get to the bit where it's gone through a number of processes as well. And I would say that, look, we need to we need to make sure that the fund is it works. Self-generating as well. So it's in our interest that we are funding projects that are gonna succeed as well, and if it's all held in whatever, it's not going to succeed, and probably that's why you're sharing some of the frustrations with the South African fund there as well. So that's how we're looking to set it up. But as Numbu was saying, we're beginning to learn. In terms of limits, we certainly are not looking at anything beyond the sort of 200, 250 mark, because as we said at the beginning, when we've done our research, most of the venture capital that are out there and the funds that are out there, they start from like your 250, 500 and above. And we're trying to address this missing middle in terms of the women and young people, but also in terms of that ticket size, because they're not addressing the 5,000 to the 20,000. And we have lots of examples from places in Sudan where actually they only need the $5,000 to really whatever as well in their communities as well. So that's the other thing. And I would just mention that, at the moment in terms of sectors, we're sector agnostic, but, tech is going to play an important part in what we also look at and focus on as well. I think as Father Charles was saying, the COVID experience and what has happened during the COVID period in terms of marginalization of that group even further has also thrown up some imperatives as well, and we will be looking to address those as well. So I think I'll stop there. Pauline might have any further thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Perhaps the only
Pauline,
thank you. Can you hear me? There was an echo. Okay, perfect. So the only thing I would add is that in terms of the fear that project might be stolen, I laugh because I used to run a competition, a Pan-African prize, and number one fear of many entrepreneurs were like, oh, my idea is going to be stolen. And at some point I would just be honest and say, okay, actually, idea itself is worth nothing, So you can actually sit there and be worried about your idea being stolen or actually trying your idea and beating your competitors on the market. But in parallel, beyond this overrated thinking that every idea is going to be stolen and being a hindrance for not seizing the opportunity is also part of what we're going to put together, including, again, part of the governance, is making sure that we are signing the NDA, the non-disclosure agreements, which basically makes it in a way that if someone goes away and share the file with someone who should not see it, there are some consequences. So we will implement that, but on the other side, I just want to say, let's be honest as well. Not every idea is going to be stolen, because if someone steals your idea, to actually make it in a way that becomes a business that is successful, they also need to have your skill set and understand how you are going to bring it to the market. Because between idea to a product to the market, it's a long way to go.
So we have 5 minutes left. We still have 2 questions to respond. I'll hand it over to Father Charles. I think one of the questions was pretty much, how come smallholder African farmers don't live from their own work? Pretty much that's what the question, it means that they work very hard, but they don't benefit from their work. So I think that's one question. The second question was that how come also Africans and African agriculture and African farmers, we have the crop, we have the raw materials, we have the labor, but we are never number one in producing anything or exporting anything. So those are the 2 questions that was asked. So I'll hand it over to Father Charles, and then if anybody has something to add, and then we'll close up for this session.
Thank you very much, Pape. Very quickly, talking about our farmers. Okay. Hello, can you hear me? Okay. I'm talking about small farmers or people like that. How come they do a lot of work, but they don't benefit? Okay. And it's related to the question that, the second question that he raised, and I spoke about it in my initial intervention, which is the power of knowledge. Yeah. And I also spoke about the need for us to enhance the skills of young people and people like farmers. Because in what makes you eat from your hard work, it's what you produce. What is its value? And what value is it making to accrue to you? And value can be in terms of, okay, let's take it in terms of money, in terms of revenue. Revenue is determined by, what you sell, what's the price and the quantity. But that is also determined by the quality of your products, which will be determined by the technology you use and the knowledge into it and all of those inputs. So that what you offer is demanded for and it fetches a high price, because price is an important component in the process. It's price times the quantity. So in order for you to increase price, you want to increase the value of the product. So what we need to do is to increase the capacity, okay, of these producers in terms of producing more, but also the quality of production. Okay, that's why we emphasize that we need to invest in technological innovation, in developing knowledge and skills that will enhance the products of the things that we produce. Now, this is a matter of those people who produce, but like I said, it's also a matter of what Pape referred to, systems change. How do we change systems in such a way that we build capacity, okay? And that's a question of responsibility on the part of those who govern. Okay? How much time, how much resources do they allocate to the development of local farmers? And today, I've been talking about systems. Again, there is an increased marginalization of those groups that you're talking about, and there's more and more attention being paid to products from outside. It's a shame, my sisters and my brothers, that Africa imports close to 85% of the food that it eats. Yeah, and that's in value terms, because you and I now tend to eat things like cornflakes and bran flakes and all of those things that have value added to them compared to the cassava that is produced in some village somewhere. Yeah, so for that to change, it needs systems. Huh? How do we ensure that we protect our own people and give them capacity and build their capabilities, and at the same time put in things that will sort of not allow foreign things to erode our systems. It's eroding. That's what we care for as a church. In fact, we call it food sovereignty. What gives you power over what you produce, and not only what you produce, also that it has value and policy, okay, and what government does, and all of that. And it is related to your second question: how come the largest producer of cocoa is not the largest producer of chocolate? I repeat what I said. What separates and the developed north from and the developing south is not a gap in money, it's a gap in knowledge. And that's what we need to work at. Again, it's both public investment in developing knowledge, but also private investment in developing knowledge. How do we ensure that we have systems, we have policies that the production of knowledge by the private sector, like you guys, okay? So that in what you're producing and your businesses, there's also investment in developing what your businesses, adding technology, and investing in the development of that knowledge that you use in your business, yeah? And then also public investment. It must be the role, okay, of the government to allocate sufficient resources to the production of knowledge, not just to the production of cocoa. Suspend the production of cocoa for a while, but pay attention to how do you have enough professors in the university? Are they well paid? Do you have enough universities? Do you have enough secondary schools? Do you have enough primary schools? How many Africans or how many Senegalese or Ivorians are going to school? Yeah, unless we change that, your question won't change. And we have an example. I gave Singapore, South Korea, Malaysia, and others that have done that within one generation. Within one generation. So like I said at the beginning, we have to be intentional. When we are making budgets, we must decide where do we take, any businessman decides, where do I take my resources to get more returns. And we must decide not just looking at the immediate returns, but also returns in the future. So how are government budgets, okay, made, and what do governments do to incentivize not only resources going, public resources going to education and production of knowledge, but also incentivize private sector to produce knowledge, yeah? Without that question again won't change. We'll keep producing the cacao, yeah? Which we don't even, how many Ivorians even eat the cacao? It's all exported, okay? So finally, I want to state what I said again. We also have to be intentional about changing the way our economies look like, economic transformation. The economy that the white man left in the 60s or 50s, which was about production of cocoa for Europe and copper and diamonds for Europe, is the same model that our governments are using. Yeah? An average African country, Zambia, Congo, Ivory Coast, all of them almost, except for a few, they produce for the North. You know, rather than produce locally and invest in the production of value-added goods that could be sent to bring in more to bring in more gains or more revenue. Unless we change that, okay, unless we transform our economies, unless we invest in education, we want. I was looking at a graph that a friend of mine, a fellow Jesuit technology economist, you know, he did this graph that was really interesting. He put together the public investment and private investment. And the graph was like this. And then he compared that to Africa. The graph was flat like that. Yeah? Yeah? And he put also other African countries by themselves. South Africa looked like this, and all the rest just looked like that. But when he took even the South Africa that went like this and compared it to the North, it's not that difficult. It just depends on how much time, how much of resources we invest in taking that child to school and all children to school, in building schools, in ensuring that there are right teachers, professors, build the health system, and all of those things for us to see development. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, I know you have questions, but we're not out of time. So I'll say that after this, you approach us, and then we're just inviting you to the next Impact Africa in Nigeria, to the launch of the fund, and also reach out to individual panelists here. You can find them on LinkedIn. You can talk to me, Numbu, or Father Child. We can get you access to them. And I think the last thing that I will just say about what Father Charles was saying, just to emphasize it, is that, you know, we know what he said, that what our parents or grandparents were doing, African countries are doing, you know, since the 60s, it's still what we're doing. It's just one small fact is 60% of African farmers are over 60s. That's one. What we're producing mostly is for consumption, and it's a labor intensive, so it's not mechanized agriculture. So those tells you a lot. The reason why Impact Africa is here is that how do we do things together to scale it up? So the whole thing is how do we scale up to be globally competitive? I'll finish with a story, and I'll give it to Numbu, who's the youth representative here, to close and send us back home. I had a friend who's producing rice in the north of Senegal, and there was a Chinese company that asked him if he can commit to produce 10,000 tons a month, 10,000 tons of rice a month. He tried everything, he couldn't do it. You know what happened? The Chinese company ended up buying him his land and now brought people to produce it. So that's what happened. So I'll hand it over to Nombu to close.
I just want to appreciate everybody who came to join to join the session. We really appreciate your time and also making the session as interactive as possible. We're really looking forward to connecting with you even beyond this conference, and please reach out if you have any further questions and if you have any ideas or rather any ideas of how you would need help with Thank you. We're looking forward to connect even beyond this.
Thanks, Pauline. Thanks, Moses. Thanks, Aya. Thanks, the tech group. Thanks, everyone. So look forward to seeing you around. Thank you.
Recording stopped.